This is the Hard Thing Podcast. Today, we are overcoming average. Welcome back to another episode of the Hard Thing Podcast. This is the podcast that helps you win the war on being average in your daily life. I'm your host, Justin Lewis, and we're here to help you improve your life by doing hard things. So we're going to give you the tips, tricks, tools, tactics, whatever you need in order to overcome average and step up above mediocrity. On our Monday show, which is today, you're actually going to hear from me and a guest talk about their story of how they did hard things and some lessons that they've learned that you can implement in your life to emulate them. On Thursdays, we have our show called The Forge, where we put into practice those actionable insights that we gained from today's show, as well as various challenges. And usually I'm on that with my co-host, Ty Crockett. But today's Monday, so let's talk about our guest today. So I have the great pleasure of introducing you to my guest, Tab Pierce. He is an author, a business person, and someone who has done hard things, specifically in business. And today will be awesome because you'll get insights into what it feels like to almost feel like the world is caving in on you. Tab at one point was $750,000 in business debt to the government, to various other lenders, including hard money loan sharks. So if you want to avoid being in a similar situation or just learn principles on how to do business correctly, listen up to my conversation today with Tab Pierce. All right. Well, thank you for being on my show, Tab. I'm excited to be here with you and have this conversation.
I'm excited too. This is going to be good.
Awesome. Let's jump in right with the question that I ask all my guests. Tab, what's the hardest thing you've ever done?
You know, the hardest thing I've ever done is probably also one of the things that that's like the best thing that ever happened to me, if that can even make sense. But about 2016, say April 2016 timeframe, I found out that my business was in like some serious, deep troubles. They probably had gone back before then, but that was kind of my awakening, was 2016. And what that meant was, you know, we had this great revenue, all these just really cool things happening at the company. And, you know, I finally sat down and listened to my CPA, my internal accountant, about just how bad things were at the company. And there was a series of events. It just didn't wake up. But it was a series of events that left us $750,000 in debt to 18 different creditors, and some of them government agencies. Some of them, you know, one of them was a hard money lender that I swear is going to break my kneecaps. And it was brutal. I mean, it was just the most difficult thing I've ever had to do, because not only was it difficult to pull out of that, I thought it would take us a year. I don't know why. I was like, we can do this in a year. It took us 3 years. And pretty much anything I know in my life is, if I'm like, I can do this in a year, I can almost guarantee it's going to take me 3 years, almost everything. So it took us 3 years to get out of it. But it was not just getting out of the business troubles. It was recovering personally, because it just beat the crap out of me. It was just, you know, to give you an idea, when it first went down, I'd come home from work, and and on the weekends too, I would sit for like 2 weeks. I'd sit in this lazy boy chair with the TV on, and I don't watch TV. I would sit with this lazy boy, or with the TV on in the lazy boy, and my wife sitting next to me, and her talking to me, and the TV going, and not hearing either one of them. And all I could think about was all of the horrible negative things that was going to happen to me. Yeah. Oh wait, Wesley Snipes went to jail for tax evasion or fraud or whatever. And we're $250,000 in debt to the IRS. I'm going to jail. Literally thinking those things, and just, you know, digging myself into a deeper and deeper hole. That was by far the hardest thing I've ever experienced in life.
So I have questions, obviously.
That's good.
First, give us a little bit more context about kind of what your business did, just so we're kind of understanding really how it all transpired?
Yeah. So my company, I have a couple companies, but the one that was in trouble, Caliber Security Partners, we're a cybersecurity services firm. So large organizations hire us out to do bad things. Actually, not sometimes, but all within the guise of their approval, right? So what happened was a couple things, and it was like a domino, right? Where like one thing like led to another, that led to another, and then all of a sudden we're like $750,000. But the first one that didn't really go noticed until the others went, and that was that we had a business unit that wasn't profitable, and the other units was carrying that, and that was probably the first one that was really there, but I just didn't notice it until later. We also had a contract with a large company where we had 8 people on out of their facility, and that contract was ended. We were supposed to get a renewal. 1 week would go into 2 weeks, 3 weeks. The renewal wouldn't come. They'd say we're doing it. We're working on it. It's just taking longer. And we had these people. 8 people for a small company is a lot. And so we kept holding on to them. We took out this bad loan with this hard money lender. That was the third problem. When all this was said and done, the contract didn't come through because the individual was transferred to a different unit or a different group within the company. So that was one of them. But then we had 8 people. We had to let 8 people go. We had a bad loan, and we had a business unit that was not successful on its own. Those 3 things kind of all collided into us being forced to come to grips with what had happened. And it was $750,000 in debt, a lot of internal turmoil that caused. I had a business partner who owned 26% of the company, and we didn't really get along. And I tried, like the year before, I was like, hey, I'll buy you out. He's like, I want, it was just a ridiculous amount of money that he wanted. And I was like, I'm not paying that. A year later, he basically said to me, I want out of the business. I'll give you the 26%. I just want absolved from all legal responsibilities. And I just went, dang, all I had to do was screw up my company to get him out. Who knew? I could get my company back I could get the 26 for free. All I had to do is screw everything up. I jokingly say that because, sometimes that's what you're left with is your humor, right? You're just like, weird things happen. And, he bailed out. I have not talked to him since. And, it's just a really interesting thing when you decide to do something hard and you decide to take something on that everybody, because most people were telling me, just file bankruptcy, close your doors, and go get a job or go start another business or whatever, but don't try to recover it. And for a couple of different reasons, I stuck with it, and I'm freaking glad I did, man. Because the other side of the pain is just this phenomenal experience, and like. I wouldn't have been the person I am. I wouldn't have started the new business had I not done that. None of that stuff. So, as hard as things get, man, the end of that rainbow or whatever, if you play it right, is pretty damn awesome.
Yeah. What do you think all of your peers and cohorts and the people around you gave you the advice to not try and recover or just to kind of quit?
Because $750,000 is a lot of money, and I wasn't legally obligated to pay all of it back. And so, business failures happen. You experience them. You move on. And I'd love to say that the main reason was because I was like, that's not me. I'm not going to do that. I honor my commitments. I'd love to say that that's what it was. But the real reason is I owed $250,000 to the IRS, and the IRS does not forgive debt. And so my greatest chance of paying the IRS back was keeping my company alive, which was also my greatest pain. So it's like, what was my greatest pain was my greatest hope. And I stuck with it early on because I was like, I gotta get the IRS paid off. And so, and the cool thing is, you know, we did. And I always say like we did, and we paid the $750 off and that, because I always want to make sure people don't go like, I wonder I wonder what they did. Did they make it? Did they? Yeah, we paid it all off.
Wow. And I'm really impressed. Have you ever heard of the story of Hernando Cortez? He crosses the Atlantic, and him in the Spanish, basically he's going to war, and they're outnumbered, 10 men to 1, but he ends up burning his boats, and that's how they won.
Yes.
It was the only way. I feel like in a way, your story exemplifies that, except you didn't necessarily choose to burn your boats. Your boats just
My boats burned.
Exactly. And you had to figure out a way.
You know, one of the things that I've had people say to me, and I wrote a book about this whole entire thing, but I specifically pointed it out in the book because I've had people say, man, you were such a warrior. You know, you just went to battle and you just handled it. And I'm always careful to tell people, you know, I wasn't like, early on, I wasn't like this warrior, like, you know, carrying my sword into battle. I wasn't frickin' Braveheart, man. I was like, this sword is heavy. I have to go to battle. I don't want to go to battle, but I have to go. And a warrior dragging his sword into battle. That was the strength I had early on. And it was things that happened that made me kind of go, wow, you know what? I think I can pick this thing up. And then I could go to battle. But early on, it was just dragging it. I mean, emotionally, and physically, and just trying to get through it. So I always tell people that because I'm always, you know, I don't want people to think like, oh yeah, you know, you just dug in, right. You just dug in and did it, because so often I think we hear the stories of people's triumph, and people aren't willing to be vulnerable enough to help other people. But man, I mean, seriously, it was ugly for a long time, and so that's the message. I mean, I don't want people to dwell on that. I just want people to realize that, like, what, you know, the rosiness that people see is usually total crap. That's usually people are getting kicked in the stomach, not literally, hopefully, but you know.
Well, I mean, it's kind of tragic that you can't really see the blood, sweat, and tears that people pay, you know, these tremendous prices in order to get the rewards that they seek. And even, you know, in Hollywood, you never see a movie where most of the movie is Rocky Balboa training. No, you see a small montage where in reality, that was probably the majority of the time between him when he starts to get into fighting and then when he fights whoever he's fighting in whichever movie, because he's always fighting someone else. But I feel like in life, we always assume that that's how it's going to be for us. But instead, it's the opposite, where it's those momentary glimpses of sunlight. But most of the time, we're just walking through this misty darkness, just doing whatever we can. So
if I can tell you just like a really brief story. So this other company I started is called Refiners, and you know, I'll mention, you know, the Refiners conference later on that we're having end of this month. But the reason I bring it up is because, you know, when we set out to do this conference, we were like, hey, this is how many people we want to have. This is how we're going to go about doing it. This is how all this is going to transpire. And I tell you, man, it has not gone the way that we thought it would. This is an education. It's a learning experience. It is stressful. It's, you know, all these things. And I mean, I'm glad we're doing it, but you know, so often we're like, you know, for whatever reason, we're like, okay, you know, in order for me to get from point A to point B, it's a straight line. Yeah. But it never works that way, you know? And honestly, point B for us is probably going to be down here somewhere, you know? It just is what it is, you know? I mean, I I set out as an example because dude, I'm just like completely open because I think that people gain. I think I gain a lot from being that way.
Yeah.
But I think other people, I mean, I was like, we're going to have 2,000 people at this conference online.
Yeah.
We're going to get like 300 or 400. Maybe we'll get more. But right now, as we sit, we're going to get 300 or 400. And I've worked my freaking butt off to get 300 or 400.
Yeah.
Right? I'm working way harder to get 300 or 400 than I thought I was going to have to get to 2,000.
Yeah.
You know, it's the obstacles. And, you know, if we look at life and say, this is really hard, and we don't look and say, whatever I'm doing is a step to the next thing, then all we do is we notice how hard it is where we're at right now. And we're like, this sucks. I can't believe I'm putting forth all this effort for 300 people. It's totally not worth it. Well, it is worth it because we're building this community and we're building something bigger. And so if I look at it, it's just a small thing. I'm like, that sucks. But if I look at the bigger thing, I'm like, oh, we're building a community. So I think that's it. We always have to remember whatever we're doing is that, we're playing a long game. Even if we have short-term desires, we're still playing a long game. At least hopefully we're playing a long game. We don't, die at 25 or something. Like I can't die at 25.
Right.
But you get what I'm saying. I mean, we're on I'm 56 years old. I'm still playing the long game. I'm like, if God willing, I've got another 30 years of working in me. Maybe, and so I'm still playing a long game, until somebody, punches my ticket. I'm freaking playing a long game.
Yeah. And that's a really good way of looking at things, because this conference that you're putting on, 300 or 400 people, it might not seem super significant compared to or relative to your previous goal of 2,000. Are you guys planning on doing it next year as well?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I made a joke to my team. I was like, we haven't even started talking. I said, we haven't even started talking about the next one. The next one, March. Mm-hmm. And they're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, let's do it again next month. They're like, you're out of your mind. I'm like, yeah, I know. I'm joking. We're not going to do it in March.
Right.
But we might do, I don't know that we're going to do one every year. I think we might do one like every, like we'll do one like every 4, 5, 6 months or whatever. We'll be like, there is a date. Let's choose that one and go for it.
Exactly.
Partly because, people do annual conferences. And I'm like, nobody says I have to do an annual one. I can do it whenever I want.
Right.
So yeah, but we're going to do more. Definitely.
And all the principles that you've learned in doing this first one, for the next ones, the learning curve is going to be that much shorter. You're going to get 300, 400 people that much faster past that. And people don't think like that.
Yeah, that's why you don't do one of anything, because that first time is just like, it's brutal. This is probably between the two. I actually am. I'm a minority owner of a third business. I've probably have started, 20, 25 businesses in my life. Wow. And probably the first 18 of them were, I don't want to call them colossal failures, but a couple of them were. But there's some big failures. But the interesting thing is none of them were as big of a failure as that experience I had back in 2016. Right. But that's also, my biggest success too. So, but we have to realize that if we look at something one time and go, yeah, I tried starting a business, it didn't go so well, so that's not for me. It's like, no, it's just you quit. Yeah. You just have to keep going, and you just have to have the wherewithal to just not listen to people. I used to have people all the time tell me, you shouldn't do this. When I first I went to a staffing agency to get a job. They're like, you're never going to get the job you want because you don't have a college degree. And I was like, who are you? And I just remember going, who are you, man? I mean, you're like one dude and you just like defined my whole career. Right. And I was arrogant. Still am a lot. But I just remember getting the job I wanted, being way overpaid for my age. But every step along the way, there's always people that are going to be there to tell you what you can't do. It's just whether or not you listen and believe them. You know, I mean, if you believe them, then they're right. If not, you just keep telling yourself, you know, I haven't done it yet, but I can do it. I just haven't found the right formula. Until I find the right formula, I'm still trying it. And then once you find the right formula, then it's refining and you're still trying.
So what advice would you give to someone to know, I guess, how to find the next idea that might work? Or maybe a better question to start with is, where's the line between I need to pivot or I need to just stick it out and keep working it on this idea?
You know, it's a good question because it's really individual. If you know, there were some businesses that I've had where, as an example, I had a business called Bizcopia, and it was a cornucopia of business information. This was probably back in about 2005. I had this whole community we were going to build up, and it was going to be this, you know, everybody just piling in and creating this massive level of content that we could share for business. Anyway, I had this whole award system and this whole thing, and it's just this business just sounded great. And I spent a lot of money, a lot of time. I ended up, I think, with about 500 users. And all of a sudden I started getting cease and desist emails and letters and everything else from companies. And what was happening is these users, because they were so interested in being like at the top of the point system, they were cutting and pasting crap off of other people's websites and putting it into ours. So, you know, all these companies started just like coming to us and going, hey, you know, cease and desist, stop this, stop this, stop this. And I just looked, I mean, there was so much going on. I just went, screw it, I'm done. I just sent out an email to everybody going, community's dead. And that was it. I mean, I killed it within a day or two, because there was so much recovery that I had to do in order to go in and like remove everything. I just didn't have the time, and I hadn't monetized it yet. So that was one I knew that I needed to kill. The key is, for me, is, you know, have I made money with it? Can I make money with it? Is it viable? Has it, you know, and those are the things, you know, I look at, because sometimes, you know, people will approach me with a business idea, and depending upon where they're at, I will I'll either give them my honest opinion, or I will let them learn on their own, because sometimes you have to take, you know, there's sometimes when a mentor can tell you, hey, pivot, go do something else. And sometimes when a mentor is like, I could save you, but if I do, you're not going to have this experience. And it's a fine line.
Right. That's a really interesting point. Maybe sometimes we need to treat ourselves like both the mentor and the mentee, kind of, you know, disassociate ourselves from ourselves, thinking, what would I learn from the situation? Or, you know, and like you said, run that fine line. In your opinion, what are the most common reasons that people, especially younger people who are trying to start businesses, trying to start side ventures or things like that, what are the most common reasons they fail or they just never get up and going?
God, you want opinions? Dang, I got a bunch of those, man. I got lots of opinions. No, one of the main reasons is we live in a time when the expectation is that we can turn a switch and money flows. And you're always hearing about people that are like, you know, hey, you know, I started this, I did this, and, you know, money's flowing, I can make you this, I can do this, and, you know, check out my Lambo, and, you know, check out my mansion, you know, whatever. And it's like, you know, if that's real, they're like 1 in a billion. It's like LeBron James going and saying, hey, check this out, man. Look what I did. I got these trophies. And you're like, dude, I can do that too. No, you can't. You know, you can't. So majority of us have to work hard for something, and we're not willing to work take that push to just create something. The other thing is, I think that there's this desire to get something without the proper effort. It's kind of the pajama entrepreneur. People are like, I'm my own business person. I wear pajamas all day. I do this and that.
Right.
I don't know anybody that works harder than me. I mean, it's like people are like, I can show you how to make money in less time. And I'm like, well, you know what I'm going to do with that time, right? I'm going to go start another business. So you're not going to give me, you can give me more time, and I appreciate that, so I can make more, but I'm going to go out and do it again. The thing that I would say that is for anybody who wants to start a business, you got to have the patience. You have to have the wherewithal. You have to realize that things are going to take longer than you think they're going to. You have to be logical about it. Try to avoid the emotional side, and as much as possible, I'm a firm believer in creating value beyond a paycheck. So, are you creating a business that if you walk away from it, that you could sell the business? Like my company Caliber, it's a business that if I decided to, I could sell it and do something else. The business itself has value. I think we miss that, these days, because we talk about stuff like, hey, I got a side hustle, I got this, I got that, and I'm all about side hustles. But I think as much as you can have a side hustle and build value in a business, do that. Maybe that's old school. Maybe I'm old, but that's still my mentality.
No, I think there's definitely strategic ways to go about doing both. I mean, for someone who's not necessarily looking to get out of their day job, a side hustle might be the perfect thing. But for someone who's really trying to think strategically and not just build businesses for cash flow, but also build businesses to treat them like an asset, I think what you're saying is very valid and very valuable. So go ahead.
I was going to say one thing, you brought up, so often I hear people say, I want to get out of my day job and I want to start a business. You got to earn that right. Mm-hmm. You really have to earn that right. That means that you have to keep doing your job until you have the money to go out and do it on your own. And, to give you an idea, when we were going through all of this trouble at Caliber, I had exhausted my personal funds. I was tapped out. All the money that we were making was either going to pay debt back or pay employees. I was out driving Uber. I drove Uber for a year plus. And I did that because it was like, I either kill my business, I either take money out of my business that needs to go back into it, or I go do something else. And that was hard because, I had a conversation with people that are like, wait, you're a CEO of a company and you do this and you have this much revenue and you're driving Uber. And I'm like, yeah, I know, it doesn't make any sense. I don't want to talk about it. You have to be willing to do what you have to do in order. You have to earn it. You always have to earn it.
With stories like that, it's important to remind the audience that the fame, the glory and all that, that stuff doesn't matter. In Tab's situation, his goal was to take his business from the brink, bring it back and make it something that was very worthwhile and doing what he wanted it to do for him. And in order to do that, he had to make certain other sacrifices. It wasn't good. It wasn't bad. It just was. Yeah.
And the thing is, when you learn how to make money, I think we also learn how to lose money. I want to admit in my life, but it was God, what's his name? Anyway, it's gonna drive me nuts. But he always has this thing. He says, "Money comes freely and easily." T. Harv Eker. Dang, look at me. I pulled it in. Harv Eker said, money comes freely and easily. And I remember going to a conference probably 20 years ago, just going, man, what a bunch of freaking crap. Just because you say it doesn't mean it's true. The truth is once you figure out how to make money, it becomes a lot easier to make it again. So even though I was driving Uber, that's, that's not where I'm at today. 2 years later after, it's just about 2 years, I think it's about maybe 18 months, my value or my income, my net worth, all of that's, turned back around. So you just have to be willing to do what it takes in order to get through what you're going through. And to see that there's going to be this tremendous value for doing it.
So with that said, specifically, what are the things that when you decided, I'm going to stick with it, I'm going to turn this company around, what was your game plan? Like, what did you do?
Well, it probably depends upon when you, at what phase I was at, like, what did I do, right? Mm-hmm. So early on, it was all about like keeping my mind straight, because I would just like, whoop, and I'd have to pull myself back. And I remember driving into the office, like screaming my head off, like, who's the man? I'm the man, who wants a piece? Freaking, I'm on fire. And I didn't believe, it wasn't true. I was just doing everything I possibly could to just get myself excited. So when I walked in the door, my employees didn't see a dude with his shoulders back. That's what I had to do. I had to motivate myself, even though I hate the idea of motivation. I had to motivate myself enough to fake it out, right? But then what happened is I made a decision that I'm going to have a good day. Today, I'm going to do everything I possibly can. So when I put my head on my pillow, I'm going to be like, it didn't go as well as I wanted it to. Things didn't transpire the way I wanted them to, but I did everything I said I was going to do. So today's a good day. And then tomorrow, I'll worry about tomorrow, but today I'm just going to do that. And one of the things I did is I was driving to work with my wife, who shares an office in our building with us. And I said, I was just flippant, sarcastic, just, and I said, I hate to-do lists. I hate critical tasks. I hate that. It's like everything's a freaking critical task. Everything's a to-do list. And I said, you know what I need? I need more opportunities. I said, everything needs to be an opportunity. Oh, this is coming in. It's an opportunity. Oh, look at that. That's an opportunity. And I was just being flippant. And by the time we hit the parking garage, I was like, I feel oddly good about calling everything an opportunity. And I said, I'm going to go create an opportunity pipeline. So I did. I created something called the opportunity pipeline. If anybody wants it, they can go to tabpierce.com and get it for free. Matter of fact, if they want a PDF of my book, it's there for free, because I want to make sure people have content, if they can't afford stuff, or that I want them to have good stuff that they can use. But I created this opportunity pipeline because I needed to be able to look and say, this is what I'm going to do. This is my big goal. This is my dream. I gave myself an opportunity to have a dream. And then I said, this is what I'm going to accomplish in the year. This is what I'm going to accomplish in the month, in the week, in the day, and the hour. And each one had to flow back into it. So it's like what I was doing for the week had to match up with what I was doing for the month. The day had to match up with the week. And I needed to do that because we needed to have some real deep focus in order to get out of that debt. And I needed it for me personally. And I've had people go like, man, don't you think that's a little too rigid? Because they've looked at it and they're like, oh, that's too much. And I'm like, well, maybe, but I have this enormous amount of freedom because I'm on the other side of all that stuff now. Because of that, because of the level of planning that I do. That's what I did day in and day out. And then I just gravitated to the point where I just went, if I continue to do this opportunity pipeline and I just follow the path that the crumbs that I've created, the outcome is going to be what I want. And each year I finish at about 80 to 90% of my annual goals. So it's good.
Wow. What tips have you learned specifically about knowing what is crucial, what isn't crucial, and what you need to say no to as far as opportunities coming down your pipeline?
Just remember a couple of things. One is there's a lot of time thieves out there. There's people that'll just be like, hey, family, like, oh, we never see you anymore. There's this, or, like my wife would come to me and she'd say, hey, can you help me with this, whatever this is? And I would say, I don't do this all the time, but if it's big enough, I'd say, I've got the day planned out. Can I do it tomorrow? I'll schedule it for tomorrow, because if I can schedule it, I'll do it. But if I don't want it to break up my day, especially if you're building something or you're fixing something, you got to be like anal about your schedule. But the other thing is, I realize that there's these bit actors in life. One of them is an example. We had this hard money lender, and these guys did just about everything. And I understand that there's different types of hard money lenders. Like in real estate, it's different than it is when it's in. And I realize that. And ours was business. It was an unsecured loan. It was a bad loan. They did everything other than actually break my kneecaps. And they would send me threatening letters. They would call my mom. They would call my daughter. They would harass anybody they could get to harass. And they're not supposed to do that stuff, but they do. And even to the point where they would send me emails and letters. They'd send me certified letters saying, you need to be at the office tomorrow because we're coming in with the police to seize your assets. And they did that twice. The first time I sent everybody home. Hey, why don't you guys all work from home today? This before COVID, right? Where everybody's working from home. But I said, why don't you guys work from home? And I sat there and I waited. I said, man, this is it. This is the end. It's over. And they didn't show. And so what I learned was that there's always going to be people in your life that are going to be there for a short period of time, whatever that period of time is. For them, they were there in my life for about 2 years because we were supposed to pay them off in 6 months, and I pushed them off for 2 years, paying that off, and it was brutal. But they're gone. Those guys are gone, and so all of these people that were not critical in my life, that I gave all this time and energy to, all this mind share, they're gone. And we do that. We tend to give so much mind share to people or situations that we don't need to give it to. And we can't do the things that we really need to do because we're overly focused on it. And what I've learned is I'll ask myself, is this a bit actor? Is this a bit, is this something that in a month from now is still going to be there? In 6 months, am I even going to remember the guy's name? I'm not going to worry about it. I mean, if it's my wife, she's not a bit actor, right? So I like TLC, that relationship, but there are bit actors, and the more you can realize that, the more you can compartmentalize those bad actors and focus on those that are good.
That's a really, really, really interesting way of putting it, because using that verbiage, actually, even I noticed this as you were talking, as you speak like that, you are by necessity putting yourself as the hero of your own story, which a lot of people,
you're the main actor, man.
You have to be. And a lot of people don't do that. They don't put themselves as the hero. They subjugate themselves to be, like you said, a bit part in someone else's story. And I like how you say, is this a bit person? Because if they're a bit person, then who are you? Obviously you're the hero, right?
Yeah. And so the last chapter of my book is called Being a Healthy Narcissist. And the reason why I did that is because when I first started writing that book, it was like when I was at the very beginning of that whole thing. And then the book went through to when I had healed and when, things were better. And I've gotten more crap for calling it being a healthy narcissist than anything else. I'm like, I didn't coin that. I'm not that clever.
Right.
But the point is like, you need to be just so freaking good at what you're doing. You have to be so amazing. But your goal in life is to make sure that everybody else rises to your level of being amazing and good. And you do everything you can. If they're willing to do it, then you go about helping them. That, to me, that's the healthy part of it is, man, I mean, I love where I'm at in life, but what makes me happier is being able to help people find their own. And I mean, that doesn't sound like a bad thing to me.
No.
But we say stuff like, oh, make sure you put your mask on before you put somebody else's on the plane. It's like, okay, that sounds really good, but do you do it? Do you live life like that? Most of us don't. And we don't want to step on people. We don't want to cause others harm, but we gotta take care of ourselves first.
Yeah. I think people have this wrong conception when they say that, when they say put your mask on before you help someone else. I believe that usually they're thinking, if you're an adult and you see a child, put your mask on before you put the child's on. In essence, they're saying put your mask on so you can put the child's on and you don't go unconscious or anything. And I think if we use that same mindset and apply it to business or developing ourselves, develop yourself so you can develop others, or build your business so you can build other businesses, other people's businesses, and so forth. So I think we need to make that mindset shift.
And sometimes you have to be willing to put yourself first, even when it doesn't feel right or when people object. And as an example, when we owed when we had these 18 companies and whatever it is, the agencies that we owed money to, there were times when I was like, man, I felt bad. I mean, I haven't paid them, we hadn't agreed upon time I was going to pay. I didn't do this. I'm a bad person. They would call. I felt like I needed to like do everything I can to make them happy. And it finally dawned on me, like, wait a second. I actually control the money. They need me more than I need them. And if they want their money back, then they're going to have to play by my rules. I'm not going to be a jerk. I mean, dude, I was out driving Uber, right? I mean, I'm taking care of them, but the mind shift for me was that because I owed the money, I was the bank in essence. And if they wanted their money back, they had to be patient and they had to do it in a way that I felt was the right way. And that even included, with me going to people and saying, we have gone through and created a conservative approach to pay you back. As conservative as I think we are, I have a feeling we're still probably not conservative enough. So this is the schedule, but realize that we might miss it. And we're not doing it on purpose. And it just is what it is. And people hated it. They couldn't stand it. But I didn't file bankruptcy and they got their money back, right? So what do they want to do? Do they want to feel better, long term, or short term, or do they want to get healed? And so you have to be willing to put yourself first, so you can put others, so you can lift others up, even when you create the damn freaking mess yourself, like I did.
Yeah, I think we all forget that in essence, we ourselves are literally our greatest asset, and in a really cosmic and universal sense, we're kind of our only asset, because you don't take it with you when you die. You only take yourself and what you learned and the capabilities you've grown within you. Real quick before because we're kind of coming down on time, I want to ask another question before we transition to the very end of our show. Can you give us a little bit of an idea of the lessons you learned about interpersonal relationships, specifically kind of those with your family as you were going through this hard time? Because I would imagine that certain relationships within your family, I mean, being harassed by hard money lenders, having a husband who's obviously going through a very hard time, and just kind of keeping all that together. What sort of things did you learn about just having a family and working with that as you're dealing with this big struggle?
Man, that's a big question. First of all, my wife is unbelievable, pliable. Man, she just, I asked her, I said, if she'd write the first chapter in my book, because I said, I think people need to hear what it was like for you. I read it and I was like, I had no idea. She put forth such a good face and would sit there and inside going, we're screwed, and on the outside saying, you got this, you can do this, there's nothing you can't do. And so I had this great support system. She didn't, and so I look back and I'm like, it's a great lesson learned for me. the thing that I would always say is, there's certain things, relationships that you just don't want to drop the ball on. If my wife would have said, I can't handle this, I want you to file bankruptcy, I want you to go get a job, I want you to do whatever, I would have just said, that sucks. And I would have gone and done what she wanted me to do, because she's done so much for me in my life that it's like, it was time. It's always time for me to do something for her, because she gives way more than she receives. So I think, we just need to be able to say there are certain relationships that I am not willing to bend on. You know what? I mean, the hard money lender, the IRS, the state revenue, whatever, I don't want to sound like a jerk, but ultimately, they're gone, man. It doesn't, who cares? But you got to keep those important relationships fresh and real, and nurture those, because it's a hard time to go through it. And I often hear people say, I went through something similar like that, and blah, 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 blah. My wife I have now. They'll always say something like, the wife I have now. And I'm like, dude, out of everything you said, man, that hurts me the most, because the wife I had then, when I went through it, is the wife I have now. And that's the thing that out of everything I accomplished, growing closer to her was by far the best.
I have to say, I think your attitude of, I would have gone and done what she asked, is probably the reason why she was willing to stay by you and work with you. And it's kind of funny, like your willingness to totally drop everything and stick with her is probably the reason why she was willing to not make you drop everything. So she, you know what I mean? But
yeah, well, yeah, it's, yeah, I'm not going to disagree with that at all.
Thank you so much, Tab, for being on the show. Like I said, we're coming down to the last bits of time here. So before I let you go, how can people reach out to you, support you, and see what you're up to?
So a couple of key things. One is, I mentioned the Refiners Conference. It's refinersconference.com. I'll give you if you want to put it, I don't know, website or whatever, a 50% off discount link. But on the off chance that doesn't come around, and that doesn't make it, and people want a 50% discount, because it's not on the refinersconference.com website, they can email me at tabpurist@gmail.com. But also, if they want to, see the that opportunity pipeline, they want a free book. If anybody wants a freaking signed book, I got that there too. I don't know why anybody wants my signature, but people do. I'm always like, seriously, you want that? tabpurist.com. And there's just reach out, and the more I can help people, the better. I always say I wish I was so busy doing stuff that I'm running out of time to help people. I jokingly say that. I hope that never really happens.
Right.
But if I can help people, look me up.
Awesome. I will get all those up in the show notes. But as far as action items for our audience, here are the action items I came up with based on our conversation. And you feel free and add to this list or change it however you want. Number one is focus on the long game. Number two is to adjust your expectations and obviously research that if you need to. And then number three is to, like you said, plan deeply with deep focus.
The only thing I would add to that, all that's awesome. I would just say, cut yourself some slack. Learn to, just love yourself, and just go, take yourself out of the situation you're in and say, if I was somebody else looking at me, would I treat myself the way I'm treating myself right now? And, because you got to treat yourself well, because that starts with you. That'd be the only other thing I'd add.
Awesome. I totally agree. I don't think we think of ourselves in nice enough terms sometimes, which is funny because sometimes we need to think of ourselves, less. It's always this balancing act. But anyways, I think that's a wonderful one. So thank you so much, Tab, for being on the show.
Yeah,
I really appreciate it. I know that our audience is going to love this, especially the business owners or business-minded people. I think they're going to get a ton out of today's show.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate being here, man. This is fun.
thank you guys for listening to today's show. I really appreciate you being in there, and I'm happy to have given this conversation with you and Tab. And Tab was wonderful. It was awesome to get those insights. I think the thing that stuck out to me mostly was just at the very end when he talked about his interpersonal relationships and his insights on some relationships you just can't drop the ball. That was very impactful for me and my life and some things I wanted to implement. So I'm grateful to him for sharing those insights. But before we let you guys go, a couple of announcements. First, we want to give you an opportunity to get a free audiobook right now. So our friends over at Audible have given listeners of the Hard Thing podcast an opportunity to get a free audiobook from Audible. All you got to do is go to audibletrial.com/thehardthingpodcast. You can get any audiobook for free and start your free 30-day trial so you can get other audiobooks at a discount. One book I would recommend is How to Win Friends and Influence People. That's a classic book for personal development. It'll help you learn how to communicate better, really how to frame things in terms of what other people want. Anyways, it's just a great book for everyone. So go get it at audibletrial.com/thehardthingpodcast. Next, I would like to invite you to join The Forge. Now, you're thinking The Forge is the name of the Thursday show, Justin. Well, yes, you're right, but it's also the name of a community of people, like-minded individuals trying to do hard things. There you can band with other people, get support from them, and get pushed to do things that you never thought you were capable of. More than that, you'll also get bonus content from guests like today's Tab Pierce, where I ask them other questions that might be interest to you and ask their steps and guides and things like that. So go to theforge.mn.co, sign up for free, join this community, get bonus content, and join a tribe of like-minded individuals where you can find belonging, where you can find community, where you can find challenge. Go to theforge.mn.co, sign up today. Now, I also want to talk about Operation Underground Railroad. You've heard me talk about them a lot. They're great people. They are a nonprofit that goes undercover to rescue kids from sex trafficking. They do hard work. They do good work, and they need lots of help. And we here at the Hard Thing Podcast are working on a campaign to raise $1,000 for them. So if you want to donate to that campaign, go to gofundme.com/overcoming-average. Donate some money today. Even just $1 helps to get towards our goal of $1,000. All that money goes straight towards OUR so they can help rescue kids. I'm super grateful that you guys stick here with us, join the podcast. Make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you get a chance, go ahead and share the show with someone you know. Think about someone who is starting up a business or maybe finds themselves in a similar situation like Tab. Share the podcast and be there to support them because they probably need it. Other than that, though, make sure you guys go out, do some hard things, because every time you do hard things, you will overcome average.